Think about the fact that there's nuance. Think about the fact that there's survivorship bias. Think about the fact that experience hampers innovation in a way because you get stuck in your ways. Think about all those things and don't be afraid to be a little bit different, right? 2 observations today. I want you to take away some things, and I want you to actually think on this because it applies to everybody a lot differently. Number 1, I want you to understand that there are 2 types of employees that work for you, and frankly, 2 types of people in this world. There are people who get stuff done. There are people who they'll take action, they'll do things. It doesn't need to be perfect. They'll get it done. And then there are thinkers and messengers. I call these people messengers. These are the people that instead of actually taking action on what needs to happen, they'll send an email to somebody else for them to do it. Instead of actually taking action on, say, reading a contract, they'll pass the contract on to somebody else to read. There are a ton of uncomfortable, crappy tasks that need to be completed in a small business. And it's so easy to pass on those tasks to somebody else or frankly, just procrastinate them. So many people in management who work remotely on computers, they become messengers. They become people who talk about and think about and know about problems, but don't actually solve them. They pass information on and around about those problems. Many business leaders and the worst business owners and leaders are messengers. They simply, I spotted something, I'm going to pass on information. I'm going to ask a question here, I'm going to pass it over to here. And yes, you have to play quarterback. There's a big difference though between delegating and becoming a messenger. Delegating is actually specifically giving somebody a task to do and seeing that it gets done the right way. Being a messenger is totally different. Being a messenger, you're simply passing on information left, information right, all over the place. Good thing I didn't have anything water in that cup that I just knocked over. So think about that. Are you a messenger in your business or are you a doer? Are your key people, your managers, are they messengers or are they doers? Hold them accountable. Create doers. Call them out for being a messenger. Obviously, don't call them out in public or in front of anybody else. But that's all I had to say there. Now, something else. I think I've been reflecting a little bit on my real estate private equity career and, frankly, my entrepreneurial journey. When Dan and I were in college, we had some mentors, and they were at Cornell University in the entrepreneurship program, and they were all into big idea entrepreneurship. We told them about our sweaty startup, our pickup and delivery storage business, and they said, yeah, Nick, that sounds good, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about raising money here? Have you thought about doing all these other things? We could have very easily got distracted, but frankly, we weren't that committed in our classes, and we weren't that committed to our mentors, and we were kind of stubborn. So we went our own way, and we tried something new, and it ended up working out really well for us. When we started our real estate private equity company, when we built that first self-storage facility back in 2000, we opened the doors in 2017, but we started planning in 2015. When we did that, we didn't get advice from anybody in the real estate world. And frankly, I'm glad we didn't, because A, they would have maybe talked us out of it, and B, they would have talked us into a structure that wasn't as good as the structure that we ended up inventing on our own that allowed us to own about 80% of that self-storage facility, even though we only put up about half the cash. What does that mean? I mean, that's a loaded statement, right? I'm a very resourceful person. If there's something that needs to be done, I'm going to critically think, and I'm going to make a decision, and I'm going to act on the best way to do said thing. Now, if I don't have any idea how to do something and there might be a better way that somebody else has, I'm going to ask a lot of questions and I'm going to get a lot of advice. But what you'll find is when you go to successful people and get advice, you'll find 2 things. A, not every successful person is smart. Frankly, there are a lot of idiots who are successful who are really bad decision makers that got involved in good businesses and got wealthy, very wealthy. There's a lot of wealthy idiots. And number 2, a successful person has a totally different risk appetite, and they should have a totally different risk appetite than somebody like you or me or whoever is in the early stages of wealth generation. Somebody who has already made a lot of money has a totally different way that they view the world than a person who has not yet made a lot of money. That's simple. It sounds silly, but think about this. I was 25 years old, about to build that first self-storage facility. I didn't have a family. I was about to get married, but I didn't own a house. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have any debt. And we were about to take a massive risk, a risk that I would probably advise myself not to take back then. I'd say, Nick, go buy an operational building instead of build one from the ground up. That's ridiculous. Why are you taking all that risk? Just do it. Well, that's because my risk appetite's a lot different now that I have something to lose, now that I own $100 million worth of real estate and, we're doing really well. So I would have a totally different risk appetite as somebody just starting out. So I would advise them much differently than what works for me. There's nuance to all of this. There's 100 different ways to win. So A, you're going to get a lot of bad advice from sharp people. And B, almost all those smart, successful people that you go get advice from are in a different life stage than you. So unless they can do a really good job, and when I do my consulting, I really try to do a good job of putting myself in the situation of the person. When I'm in the situation of the person, I try to think about the fact that there's nuance. There's nuance. What's a smart move for me in my current life situation is much different than what is a smart move for somebody else in their current life situation. There's 100 different ways to win. There's 100 different ways to skin the cat. What's the best way to go? It's different for everybody. It's different for everybody. So when you go out and get advice, and when you go out and get mentorship, and when you read, and when you listen to people like me, think about the lens at which that information is coming through. Think about the person and their life situation. Me, I think bigger now. It's also easy to get caught up in the weeds and think, oh my God, Nick, he's doing such big things. I want to be like Nick. And if I would have been following people like me back in 2011 when we first started buying a cargo van and driving around hauling boxes around, I would have given up and tried to shoot for the moon, and it would have ruined everything. Starting really small, starting really low risk, starting really hot, in a bad business, starting in something that's labor intensive, trade your time for money. Doing that stuff early on is an incredible advantage in the big picture thing, but that might not be the advice you get from somebody who's made it big. There's also a lot of survivorship bias from people who have won and succeeded. Those people who have won and succeeded, they don't have a lot of failures. Maybe they won, maybe they beat the odds, maybe they got lucky. Definitely I did. I got lucky. What I did back in 2011 might not work now. There's a lot of competitors in that space. So just think about that. I mean, we've proven the model of self-storage managed remotely. We've proven that model. And there are still people with 30 plus years experience in the self-storage space that tell us our model is not the best way. Even though we're making better returns, we're growing faster, we're more profitable on a same store basis, on a per square foot basis. There are tons of people with 30 plus years experience that tell us that it can't be done. In some ways, and this goes back to the hiring. Are you going to hire somebody who has a ton of experience, or are you going to hire somebody who's fresh and doesn't know how anything works? Oftentimes, I prefer lack of experience. I prefer to hire somebody who doesn't know how things work, because you can come at it with a lens of innovation. I think experience, to a degree, hampers innovation, because people are very bad at changing their mind. People like me, people who have won, people who are successful, they're very, very bad at changing their mind. They get set in their ways. They think they know everything. They're more likely to disregard information that disputes what they think. So as you go about getting advice and mentorship from all these different people, think about these things that I've mentioned. Think about the fact that there's nuance. Think about the fact that there's survivorship bias. Think about the fact that experience hampers innovation in a way because you get stuck in your ways. Think about all those things, and don't be afraid to be a little bit different, right? For the most part, I poo-poo on radical innovation. I don't think taking huge, gigantic leaps forward is the way to approach entrepreneurship. But here I am running the largest remotely managed self-storage portfolio in the country. We don't have an office. There's bigger operators than me who don't have a manager at every store, but they definitely have an office. They don't offshore employees, and they do a lot of things old school. They still take cash. They still take check. We don't do any of that stuff. So coming from a guy who talks about good old-fashioned sweaty entrepreneurship, I actually, if you zoom out and think about what we are doing at Bolt Storage, it's actually pretty radical. It's actually pretty significant innovation. So yeah, think about it. Think about your risk. Think about your nuance. And that's the thing about entrepreneurship. You can listen to these podcasts. You can listen to people like me talk. And there's just there's no substitute for getting out there and doing it. There's no substitute for trying. There's no substitute for learning as you go and making decisions as you go. Because there are 1,000 factors that influence every single part of your business every single day. And they change all the time. So what worked for me, what worked for Steve Jobs, what worked for Elon Musk, what worked for the guy down the street who you got advice from last week, it's going to be a little bit different in your situation. So take with this what you please and have a good day. Hey guys, I have big news. I recently revamped my sales and customer service team at my self-storage company using folks in South Africa. Listen to this English accent.
Hi there, my name is Anton and I'm a sales professional from Gqeberha or Port Elizabeth, which is in the eastern province of South Africa. I've been in sales for about 8 years now with experience in hardware sales with some of the leading brands in the world, such as Canon, Panasonic, and more recently, Red Bull.
Okay, now the surprising part. The person you just listened to is available for hire right now, and they're asking $9 an hour. If you want an introduction, if you want to hire this person into your business or at least interview them, send me an email, nick@sweatystartup.com, and I can make an introduction and offer you $1,000 off the recruiting fee. nick@sweatystartup.com.